Hello. I'm Russ Kane. This is Men's Radio Station, and this is, of course, I don't know why I say of course. It's just in my head, of course, the ABC of CBD. Yeah, I'm always just the passenger here, as I like to say, a conduit, a wire, a pipeline between you, the people who know what they're doing, and the audience, and everything like that. Look, I'm going to prepare you for a little bit of a shock. You remember that young, handsome whippersnapper, Ollie Mammon? He's just got back from Glastonbury. When I say just, I mean just got back from Glastonbury. God only knows what went on there, but this is what he looks like.
Hey-o.
Oh, you look great.
Jeez, intense week. That's all I can say. What an intense week.
How is the career as the Dave Grohl lookalike going?
Yeah, so honestly, it was really fun. Signed a lot of autographs. Did Dave proud.
Yeah, sure.
It was it was an incredible week. Just feeling a little bit wavy.
And how's the band,
ropey.
the CBD Fighters, coming on?
They're really good.
They're going to be on tour.
Really good.
Right. Yeah. Okie dokie. Enough of taking the inevitable rip out of each other. Ollie, would you like to do the honors and bring on our special guests, if you would be so kind?
Yeah, definitely. So a few weeks ago, we were joined by Nick Morland from the APPG. We had a conversation about what they're planning and how they're trying to, you can call it, navigate the political route which surrounds the cannabis market in the UK, trying to create a bit more of an open narrative, creating, call it less barriers around our industry. And Nick suggested that we speak to a few other people in his, you could call it, inner circle. So today we're joined by someone very close to Nick, who Nick's actually going to introduce to us. Now, basically, it's about getting those further conversations from the industry. It's about getting a further understanding of the way in which people think. It's about seeing the different players out there and what their goals are. And that's what the whole point of this show is, to create a transparency to the narrative of this industry, is to create a transparency to the way people operate and why. So that's what we aim to do today.
And also, Ollie, to look to the future.
Exactly.
Because I think this is really future. These chaps that you're about to introduce, this is, in my personal opinion, because I'm not in the industry, unlike you, is where these are the guys who can move this forward at an exponential rate.
And a system like this is exactly what the rest of us as an industry need in order to be able to kind of grow off of it. You know, whether it's the APPG or whether or not it ends up being someone else, a structure like this is what's so important for the rest of us who really want to see, legality, who really want to see an open market, who want to be able to flourish in helping people and flourish in designing and flourish in our industry, which we've built from the ground up. So,
and you'll be cross with me what I'm about to say, but it's an industry like this needs the grown-ups.
Yep, an industry like this
really
also needs people who know how to play the system. Very often in this industry, I've said it before, is, we get very frustrated when things don't work our way. But also you got to, we all know that we're not the people who understand how to make these changes. We look at the system as almost being unfair because we don't understand how to navigate it. It's the same as almost being locked in a maze or trapped in a maze. If you can't find your way through the maze and everyone else seems to be finding their way, it gets very annoying. If no one finds their way through the maze, then what happens is you've got this group mentality of unfairness. The maze is not built fairly. However, if you understand how to
you look for fairness in life, you will go round the bend. It's the route to madness. Let's bring our guests on, because they're eating, frankly, all of my Danish in the digital green room. I'm on a budget. Right, here we go. Hello.
Very, very nice to see you.
Welcome back, Nick.
It's an absolute pleasure. And you talk about how it helps and grown-ups and the rest of it, but we're deeply respectful of the fact we're joining an existing party. So we're symptomatic of the industry growing up, and we bring complementary skills. And part of why it was so exciting to be on your show last time round is it gave us an opportunity to explain that it's not either or. It's, we're interested in the 400,000 jobs and hemp in the field and all the rest of it. And we're
building a sustainable future, right?
Yes, and whether it's
a real future, a logical future, and a future which other people can actually you know, a business plan without the numbers is not a business plan. It's just it's a narrative, it's a dialogue. And what you're doing is you're putting the numbers in place for people who work analytically to actually understand how much of a difference this industry can make to our world. And I kind of, you know, when you drop in these numbers about jobs, about employment, about, you know, areas of the UK which have been, you know, completely unthought about and forgotten almost, and how it can bring life back to them, that is important. But it's mainly, it's not what you're saying, it's the way you're saying it, which is what me and Russ were so attracted to. We were attracted to the fact that you're creating this picture, not that we understand, that they will understand, because we all, you know, we as a community already know what you're preaching. It's the externals, you know, the external powers around us who need convincing, who need educating, and that's what you've been doing very well.
It's really interesting the degree to which one's pushing on an open door. So what we're doing a lot of the time is we're arranging stuff that already exists, which is nerve-wracking when people have held it close to themselves and it's been precious for so long. But we don't bring a lot of extra content. What we do is we bring a process. And actually, it's not that hard, as we touched on last time round, to persuade people in government or civil servants or whatever else to help, or investors, which is why we suggested Bill. Because if you explain it, it suits them too. And the point we touched on last time as well is, you know, there are always a tiny minority of bad actors, but they tend to get to use up most of the oxygen. You know, when you combine that with frustration and genuine unfairness, it gets quite tricky. So to have an opportunity like this with you guys, where you're already in the, you know, in the industry, in the market, you're a trusted source of information, you're doing your own thing already. What we're saying is, look, 400,000 to 500,000 jobs. We're saying £3.5 billion a year tax, and that's just based on extrapolating from Colorado. Colorado, I think, is the most representative. At the other end of the spectrum, when we're talking at Westminster, you can see an illegal trade that's dropped to the lowest of any of the 33 states that have legalized it, and lower than any of the states where they haven't legalized it. You know, that's the recreational end, which is a political decision. You know, what we need to make sure is that we unlock that wall of money. And Bill is somebody who's worked in that world, another specialized world. He's now at the stage where he's interested, and he speak for himself. I'm just going to do an introduction, then I'm going to go, because I think you should just have him to yourself. But what I've said last time is, if we get this right, if we make it accessible, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be sensible, with a process where people can see movement and how it brings the best of the pieces together. And Bill is interesting because we're all now very close to this. Bill is somebody who's industry agnostic, but he can see the opportunity, and he can understand, having done similar things before and created jobs and created new industries, what it is that's in it as far as he's concerned, what he wants out of it, and how he likes to behave. And I just think that's important for people to see actual human beings rather than getting their life lessons off billions. You know,
I absolutely love your terminology, like agnostic. It's fantastic to bring that into this conversation. It's so interesting. What I was saying to Ollie, and I've discussed this a lot off air with him on the phone and stuff like that, is the way that you guys come in and look at stuff in a completely fresh, a very analytical, but such a professional level. It fascinates me, because it's not what I do. It's not what I'm, you know, that's not the pool in which I swim. So I always find it really, really fascinating to listen to you guys.
It's almost like dressing the cannabis industry in a suit and tie. It's quite lovely.
It's exactly that.
Well, at least a suit.
But actually, Oliver,
a very nice suit. Very nice suit.
It is exactly that. Because if we put anyone else in a suit, we're no different. We're going to be no better conversation. We're going to be no smarter, no stupider. We're not going to change how we're thinking. But actually, the suit is not just a cosmetic exercise. What we're doing is we're making ourselves accessible. When we're putting people in a position where they help us, it doesn't come back and haunt them. We're saying to them that if we get disagreed with, we're not going to shout it at everyone and get them to lose their jobs. And when they do agree to help, we're going to tell everyone so they get promoted. It's not an unreasonable quid pro quo. And particularly with, you know, we touched on it before, it makes me quite cross sometimes, particularly with public servants. People that get into public service to get rich, they get into it for all the right reasons, nearly all of them. And so to actually put them in a position where they can help, they like, and put them in a position where, having not given us exactly what we wanted and we haven't put them in a position to help, and then shout at them, it's just grossly unfair. And I know that life isn't fair, but it should be. You know, and we're just, you know, I don't grow out of that. You just don't grow out of it. But anyway, I was very keen for you guys to meet Bill, because if we're going to make the UK and British Isles into a world centre for doing it right, and we are being looked at by everyone now, it's really exciting. If we can take those people who are our most vociferous critics today and just behave in a way that allows them to make us accessible again and again and again and again, they will become supporters, most of them. And when they do, they're going to have enormous credibility and be a massive asset for us, for the industry, for us as a business and everything else. But there's no substitute for those hard yards. We just have to walk it and walk it and walk it some more. And
can I ask this is quite a tangential question, but I'd like to ask both of you while I've got both of you here. Is the recent events in America, and we're watching America for reasons that are beyond this show, it's more from my daily show, going backwards in so many ways. You know, they're looking at things to reverse engineering of the worst nature. Do you think once they've finished telling everybody what to do, they might look at this industry and say, oh no, we've gone too far. Now let's wind the whole thing back? I think it would be tragic if they do, but I'm just curious of where this narrative that's going on at the moment, especially with the decision last week, where that's going to lead in terms of they might see this as sort of moral crusade and go back to the days of Richard Nixon. Does that make any sense to you?
No, it's a good question. I think, from my perspective, I think there's a lot of real things going on. I wouldn't deny that there's obviously court decisions, legislative work that's going on that is not what the direction I think most people would like to go. Right? I think we're seeing, unfortunately, the public dialogue being pushed to extremes.
Yes,
which never really good. There's reasons for that. Some good, some kind of historic trends, and just to a certain extent, it is what it is. My bias is it will burn itself out. The great majority of people want progress. They want the issues of the issue needs to be about jobs. It needs to be about average household income. Yep. It needs to be about things that are improving the lives of people, not dragging them, into one particular moral position or whatever. So I don't believe that the current trends are necessarily universal, and I don't think they will affect where cannabis is going in the long run.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. Well,
you have a beautiful accent, by the way. So lovely. It's so nice to have someone foreign on the show. Do you know what I mean? It's quite lovely. So thank you so much for joining us. It's very, very nice accent. Just like
goddamn I'm foreigner, really, over here taking our jobs, hitting on our women.
That's it. Driving our cars. No, let's not do that. We're not doing that. So go on, Nick. Go away. Leave us with Bill. You can go now. We've got 45 minutes left with him to grill him and drive him mental.
Thank you very much.
Bye, Nick. See you soon, mate. So, Bill, first of all, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us. You're the first person who's ever flown 15 hours to be on our show. So, I want to say thank you so much for that. It's an internet-based show, so next time you can stay in America, we can film from there. So so let's just start. Tell us a little bit about you, Bill, because right now, unless people start Googling your name, no one knows anything about you. So if you can just tell us a bit about you, who you are, what you do, and how you found your way into Tenacious Labs, like what the journey was.
Sure. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Actually did my MBA in Manchester years ago. So been here, lived here, worked in the city of London for a while, then moved to New York, worked on Wall Street, got really tired of that, did a hard right turn into healthcare, and began to invest in businesses. I did my first management buyout, 20 years ago now, almost. Bought a health tech company that we grew, sold that. Began to invest in other companies, have a couple of pharmaceutical investments in the U.S. and has a bit of an EU presence as well. So we do primarily specialty medications. So I've invested in companies that basically help particular populations get their drugs cheaper, faster, better with what we think of in the US model as kind of concierge care. So if somebody is a chronic disease that needs a particular bundle of clinical services around the drug, we're designed as a company to make that happen. So that investment kind of led me to look at a lot of different things, particularly how fintech supports the development of healthcare. So that's it's blockchain, not crypto, but blockchain, and so it's really interesting to see how that helps transparency, how it helps the tracking of both medications as well as the compliance with those medications and the funding that goes along with it. So we met about, I guess, a year ago now, met Adrian and Nick, and found what they were doing in terms of, from my perspective, helping make cannabis industry, bringing it into mainstream, bringing it into the establishment, if you will. Although I know that's not the nicest of words per se, but bringing it in and making it investable. So, our role is to build the investment vehicles to help grow the industry, right? So to bring, legal capital into a legal industry to help it grow and do what it needs to do. So we were very excited about the work that Nick is doing in the APPG. We're excited about what they're trying to do with Tenacious and make quality and quality branding real in this space. You've got to have the structure, you've got to have the standards, you've got to have, quality needs to mean something. And, they've got a group of people that are adults, right? And it's fabulous to watch this, this happen and transform itself. And, we've done some things in cannabis fintech in the US, trying to make that work and bring capital into that space. So, we've been dancing around kind of the same market, and it's really interesting to see kind of the angle at which they're coming. So we've been delighted to begin to work together.
Very nice, very, very, very nice. So you say you're a serial entrepreneur. You say that can you give us some things you've actually worked? So let's say when you say you worked in Wall Street, you were a trader, as in you were just
no, actually,
like one of those like the wolf a little bit.
Not quite.
I took a bet with myself how long before we can get a Leonardo DiCaprio reference, and I just won my own bet there.
Nice. How much you win?
I won a cup of coffee.
Good for you, man. Hope you enjoy it.
I know how to live.
Good for you, buddy.
So anyway, no, you were not the wolf.
No, I know he was not the Wolf of Wall Street. Okay. I know he's not Jordan Belfort.
We are such simple
his name would
folk,
say
Bill.
Jordan
Bill,
Belfort,
we're simple
not
folk.
Phil
You have
Oldham.
to bear with us.
But you were
a fan personally, so it's just I wouldn't have chosen Leo to play me, but
No.
I like that. And when you say you started working in, so basically you got sick of healthcare, and you got sick of Wall Street, and you went into healthcare. Mm-hmm. So you mean like big pharma, as in like what do you actually mean by that?
Well, the first thing
I'm just trying to get an idea of your journey.
Sure. The first thing I did, I was a marketing manager for a telemedicine venture in the Middle East, actually. So moved to the Middle East and basically ran telemedicine, connecting Western universities into Middle Eastern hospitals. We deployed some of the first electronic medical records, into a whole variety of both public and private hospitals. Did that for a number of years, went back to the US, did some tech startups on what today we'd call it, mobile nursing platforms. It was wireless home healthcare in those days. Did work in health tech. We, after 9/11, worked very closely with a lot of public sector health organizations in the US.
But a lot of the organizations you were working with or started investing in, these were, you could call it, baby industries at the time. So you weren't, let's say, getting involved in, mass pharmaceutical setting. You were getting involved in almost these growth industries. So you've always been involved in growth sectors.
Absolutely.
right? Okay,
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
Fine. And how did the transition? So you had your healthcare, you've had your pharma investments, you've had your, dealing with specialist medications, concierge care, and the fintech and the blockchain and all that lot. How did cannabis come into it? Because the whole idea is, I understand, like, you've got the pharmaceutical world. It's not dead. It's still extremely blossoming. There's more money to be made now in pharmaceuticals than ever before. Why U-turn? Then why decide to look at, you've managed to make it into an industry which is the industry. It's especially with COVID just had, you guys are all billionaires now, every single one of you. I mean, literally every one of you has now smashed it out the park off of face masks and hand sanitizer in the AstraZeneca. So I mean, how that's happened, like, why did you look left, see this smaller road next to you running alongside of you, which is still, call it, heavily controlled, still relatively demonized, still not being adopted by anyone, and it's a bit darker than anything else you've done so far. It's, you could call it, it's anti-authoritarian, it's anti-normalization. Like, everything else you've done is implementing a structure which is kind of needed. Cannabis has always been there, and it's always been pushed away. So nothing else you've dealt with has been pushed away. It's always been accepted. It just wasn't there to be accepted. What you're dealing with now is something that was repelled, still currently is repelled, probably will be repelled for a lot more time. Why did you choose to switch over? I'm just trying to, like, what makes someone who's done, who's had a logical ladder climb, where you've constantly done better and better and better things. Why did you jump off of your ladder into a green river that goes whatever route it wants?
Well, let me challenge your assumption a little bit with the telemedicine story. So telemedicine in the broader health IT business is a true outlier. I mean, it was almost evangelistic in the way it was pitched as, here's something that's going to change the way we deliver medicine, make healthcare more accessible, all of these things. And the broader healthcare establishment resisted it. And it's really been COVID that has changed a lot of that. I mean, the fact that you couldn't go to a physical doctor's office changed a lot. And particularly in the States, there's a massive regulatory burden in the way of telemedicine technologies being implemented. So I see there definitely being an analog there with where cannabis is going, because it's kind of in this quasi space now where it's kind of half legal, half not, right? And trying to figure out, what do you do with that? How do you move that into, a more purely constructive and truly mainstream effort? You don't want to lose what's good about it. What's good about it is the difference it can make. What's good about it is the clinical applications that maybe don't rise to pharmaceutical grade kind of investments, but are still in the space doing some really interesting things for people. So I don't see it quite as much as an outlier as you portray it. I think it's going to follow a path that I've seen before, and it's going to be interesting.
If you look how quickly telemedicine came into practice. Okay, so basically, if you look at us as a world, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've adopted Microsoft Teams, we've adopted Zoom, we've adopted, FaceTime is being used a hell of a lot more. When I was at uni, 15 years ago, we didn't have FaceTime. That whole idea of a video call wasn't really a thing. We used Blackberries. Blackberry camera was crap. You know what I mean? We didn't have any sort of video call. So the whole idea of your logic of, telemedicine took a long time to adapt. It really hasn't taken that long. Cannabis has been around for far longer than telemedicine, and it's still fighting the battle. So I do agree with you that, people always wanted the face-to-face with the doctor. However, no one wants a face-to-face with anyone anymore. So it's almost like society's changed in every regard, not just medicine. Like right now, we're doing Rust used to record all of these shows live. He used to do them all in a studio. Doesn't do that anymore. Most meetings used to go and travel for an hour to have a 45-minute meeting. No one does that anymore because technology has enabled us to have it. I don't think the telemedicine is an adoption of people. I think the telemedicine is like you said, it's an adoption of technology. So I don't think it's comparable. And I don't think that in the 1960s, telephone medicine or like a tele doctor, I don't think that was even feasible
But
or
I
available.
had this conversation, and Bill would probably bear this out, I'm thinking, because when I had a production company, at the point I had a business partner back then, and I'm going back to the 90s, and he was an evangelist about the whole notion of remote medicine, etc. And when he was telling me about this, and I am going back to the 90s now, I looked at him and I'm thinking, well, this is just science fiction. This is, this is bonkers. A great idea, but I'd also like to have a jetpack on my back and fly around. That's not going to happen either. So I was impressed by it, but I didn't. So it's interesting. Maybe it's a marriage of having the technology, but also because COVID was such a seismic shift in the way the world operates, and I think we won't even for years be able to see how deep that went. The two came together, so it's kind of perfect timing, isn't it?
It's perfect timing, but I think there is definitely an analog to the legal construct work that needs to get done around cannabis, right? Because if you look at it's one thing to have all the social dynamics and the fear of the pandemic driving people onto an online platform. Wholly agree with you on that as what's the motivator. But to enable it to become a business and a business process, law had to change, right? And so the structure legally had to change because you had all sorts of things. And I'm speaking predominantly from a U.S. model here. I mean, the fact is you have state certifications, credentials for medical practice that had to change to allow telemedicine to happen. Medicare, Medicaid had to change billing regulations to allow a virtual visit to be billed at a known price, right? So all of this had to change to allow that relatively straightforward virtual, interaction to occur and to have a financial component to it, right? You could always call your doctor, right? You could always do what you could do in the 50s, 60s, whatever, but they couldn't charge you for the medical advice. Now they can, right? And so that to me is where the analog really is. You had to have that legal and financial structure placed with the technology to make it really truly dynamic. And I think that's what you're going to see here in cannabis as well. You're going to see that the legal and financial dynamic come in and normalize a true industry that takes us to the jobs and the tax revenues and all of the things that Nick likes to talk about.
I'm going to carry on. So one more thing. I'm not meaning to interrogate here. I'm just trying to get to the brass bones of you could say. So about a year ago, you started working with Nick. About a year ago, we were still in that COVID bubble. Do you know what I mean? I'd say we're out of it now. It still exists, but we're out of that COVID bubble mess. Now, a year ago, the medical investments around you were astronomical. Why did this take your attention and not what you call it, one of the more, as a serial entrepreneur? Do you understand? As a serial entrepreneur, someone who has, always been on that cusp, always been on that curb. Maybe you did as well. I don't know, but did you? I'm surprised that you decided to latch onto cannabis at that time, as opposed to latching onto COVID like every other serial entrepreneur did over that time.
Well, we had our investments that did okay in COVID. I avoided for a lot of reasons, most of them personal. I avoided what I consider to be kind of the hanger-on effect of everybody kind of wanting to jump into the personal protective equipment market, building the chasing vaccine deals around the world. I avoided those things. So I just didn't feel right about them. Right. I mean, I think there was not to say profiteering, but certainly things I just didn't want to be associated with. From that COVID. Look, when I invest in something, I'm not looking, generally speaking, at just the financials. You need to look at what it's actually going to do. What's the impact that this is going to have? What's it going to have in terms of the value the quality of the product, the change it makes. Maybe it's a little old-fashioned for you. It's not just an investment spreadsheet. You've got to actually have people you trust.
No, I completely agree with you. I literally, I've just put my pen down. I just sat up straight because I'm listening to you. I'm thinking it's so right. One of the biggest issues in our industry is a lot of people kind of invest in the numbers. They invest in the bells and the whistles as opposed to investing in the people, as opposed to investing in the structure, as opposed to investing in what they can see, smell, and hear. They're investing in just what they can see or just what they're told. And I think it's one of the biggest issues. Leading on to this, what I was going to ask you is how did you pick Tenacious Labs? So, I mean, out of all the other cannabis investments out there, because there are several thousand companies you can invest in now, every single one portrays themselves to be better and bigger and more powerful than the last. And every single one is actually a crock of lies, because that's just what happens. Like every company in this industry, they build these $50 million valuations for a $3 idea. And then the $50 million disappears within 3 months, and they ask for another $50 million still for that $3 idea. And it doesn't make any sense. And I'm sitting there also from an internal perspective, looking at someone who is investing from an external perspective. How did you decide? How do you choose where to put your money? And also maybe you can give other people out there who are looking at potentially being an investor in this industry a little bit of guidance, because that's one thing which people get lost on a lot. It's something people get stung on a lot.
No, absolutely. Well, I think, honestly, it's actually really simple in many ways, and maybe I'm a little old fashioned, but people do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. Right. And if you work from a position of the people matter, right, that goes all the way through it. Right. I mean, the person you're trying to pitch this $3 idea to, you're not only not going to give real value to your investor, you're not actually serious about giving real value to the end customer either. And I think that's
all about the patient.
It's got to all be about the patient. And so, in my pharma investments, it's how do you get somebody with a chronic disease the help they need at the right price with the financing the way it needs to be, which is a very difficult challenge in the U.S. In the U.S. model, it's very, very difficult. And it's not that much different in the cannabis space. I mean, there are thousands of things that you can invest in. But when we sat down with Nick and with Adrian and the broader team here at Tenacious, it was clear that quality meant something to them, that they were not afraid of testing the science of what they were going to sell. So the products that they were looking to acquire were going to be real things that you could actually make good margin on, that did good things for people. And they weren't afraid of, somebody sitting down there with the green eye shade and looking at their numbers either. So we could actually do some real, we'd have a real adult conversation. And I think it's been refreshing, because I have had a number of things cross my desk in the States, and chose to do none of them, right? Because they were not ready for prime time, as we say.
When did you start getting cannabis investments dropping on your desk?
2016, 17 timeframe.
Okay, so it's relatively late. It's not like you've been having them on your desk since, you know what I mean? Like, because the cannabis industry has been flourishing since early 2000s. Do you know what I mean? Like, since early 2000s, money's been being pushed in. Like less than now, but money has been being pushed in. I was just curious, because you were in the medical side of it. When did these, you could call it, requests start falling on your desk? Now, can you give us some of the requests which you don't mention company names, but some of the requests you just looked at and be like, no, I'm not doing that, and why?
I think they were generally of two flavors. One was, how do you deal with the problem of unbankability in the U.S., right? I mean, it's not being federally legal. They can't use the federal commerce rails for banking, right? So a normal federally regulated bank in the U.S. can't take proceeds from a cannabis-related business, right? So how do you solve that problem? Most of the people were, they were very unsophisticated in terms of the methods with which they wanted to solve that problem. So there wasn't a lot of credible solutions. So that was one flavor. The other flavor was more in what I'd consider to be broadly the medical cannabis space, right? Where people were pursuing an activist pharmaceutical grade product for, oh, this cures, X, Y, or Z, right? Pick a condition. And the science wasn't good enough, right? There wasn't and some of that is historically unfair. It's been blocked out from what was necessary. So, a number of things that were good that I did look at were things around testing, around cannabis genomics, around, trying to get the data to a good place where you can actually, begin to be confident about what you were saying, the provenance of this as a product, the specificity of, what the active ingredients are, how do we get to dosage levels. I mean, those are things that are emerging now. But, 5-6 years ago, when this was starting to come across my desk, it was a lot of flash and sizzle, but no reality. And I think that was the struggle in terms of deploying capital.
I get that.
So it's so interesting when you bring the disciplines that are required into something which is initially was kind of a bit like the Wild West, and it's how you marry those two together. I think that must have been like the rough patch. And I wonder, this is a kind of, again, a slightly off-kilter question, but when you said no, how did those folks, did they understand why, or they just thought, no, it suits and they won't get what we're doing sort of thing, in a rather childish way? Or did they actually appreciate, we better do some more homework here and get our act more professionally together?
I think the reactions were across the spectrum, really. I mean, I think there were, the cottage industry nature of cannabis in the U.S. is that there's a lot of owner-founder kind of businesses and not a lot of really professionally managed groups. That has changed over the years. Certainly, the legalization of the dispensary side, so the delivery side, the retail end, has seen probably the greatest progress in kind of professionalization and the growth of those businesses. But a lot of the rest of the industry on the production side still has some pretty significant challenges in terms of being able to
See, I think there's a little bit of an issue in the industry that. So I'm going to use a metaphor. I hope you get it. I feel like the painters get more praise than the poets. So the people who know how to paint a picture, who know how to build this idea and show it to someone, they seem to know what they're doing. But the people who actually understand the words and use the prose to create a narrative, the words aren't listened to. Now, both the picture and both the painting and the poem, both have the same image. But I feel like the painting has and the poem probably has more structure. The poem probably has more going on. However, the painting is what people see. And that's a big problem in our industry, because I do believe still that flashing lights and bells and whistles go a hell of a long way. And hence why there are companies like Cannabo or David Beckham's Cellular Goods, which were investable models, which have literally burnt hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of the average investor's money. And this isn't people like you. These are like average house moms. Yeah, let's invest in cannabis. Yeah, Cannabo is going to be great. And they've just lost all their money. Like my business partner, God bless his little soul, invested in David Beckham's things. He thought it would be a good thing to do, because why wouldn't it? And I think he put in like 20 grand. It's now worth 500 quid. He's lost 19,500 pounds. But everyone's done their bollocks. We were talking in the office. He was like, question, my shares are now worth negative assets. Is there any way Cellular Goods can call me up and ask me to pay more money for my shares? I was like, no, they're never going to ask you for that. What they could do is bankrupt the company and your shares will be worth nothing. But they're never going to call you up. Hi, mate, listen, you owe 500 quid, your shares have dropped a little bit more. It's a little margin call right here. It doesn't happen. But I'm saying there are so many companies out there which have done that. There are other companies out there I could name drop all day long, just these scumbag companies who paint these incredible pictures, who then get a couple of suits behind them, present this image of we're great, we're wonderful. But in reality, the concepts they're selling, the ideas they're selling, they're just paint. It's just a painting. It's not real. It's just literally a fabrication of colors and designs. It's not real. And it's a massive issue in our industry. And that's, it drives me a little bit mental. And that's one of the bigger problems with, or the other side argument of suits getting involved, is suits do get involved. They make these pictures shine, and then these pictures get sold to the average individual, and they're not thinking about the end consumer. And not everyone works like you, Bill. Most people do not work like you. Most people do not care about the end patient. Most people do not care about the product functioning correctly. Most people do not care about the trail of destruction they leave behind them, as long as their pockets are full at the end of the journey. And it's a big issue in our industry where there's been a lot of mercenary money coming in. It's money coming in order to pull money out, as opposed to money coming in order to build a structure. It's not the Red Cross. These are mercenaries. They're not trying to build hospitals and schools, and they're not trying to build the cannabis industry to be a world. They're just trying to, pillage it.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely right. And I think that's the reason why the work that Nick is doing with, to make this a legal market, right? I mean, if you don't have, what you started with, Ollie, earlier is, let's make this something real, tangible, regulated, so that, there's actually a future in this, a future of jobs, a future of tax revenue. But that's built on a future of, you've got to have legal integrity to be able to make sure that, the right actors prevail. And I would say your comments are spot on, but it's one of the reasons why I think that I didn't invest in the first 5 or 6 years.
No,
right?
1,000,000%. But listen, I'm not bringing up, if anyone's listening, I'm definitely not bringing up those comments as an attack on Bill. I'm definitely bringing them up as a praise on him, because so many people did get invested earlier on. And you can ask anyone I know, I've been involved in this industry for years, and people have always asked me, who should I invest in? And I was like, don't invest in anyone. And they're like, why? Because none of them are real, dude. It's all a fabrication. It's like investing in, it's like investing in websites in the early 90s. It's not real. It's a game. So unless you're willing to play the game and literally get in, get out, get in, get out, and almost build your bricks up slowly, so there's no long-term investment here. If there is, it'll be worth it. Then the next day, it's not going to be worth anything. It's just what's going to happen. There's going to be playing that game, that up and down game, because the market is so, like you said, it's that quasi space of legal, half legal. All right. It's so volatile that you have a lot of unentrepreneurial entrepreneurs who end up getting very lucky, do something very good, but they can't maintain it because they're not entrepreneurs. They're employees who have basically had a chance to succeed, but they can't maintain that. They can't push it. They earn their 50 grand, and as opposed to taking it to $100 million company, they spend that 50 grand because they think they're ballers. They think they'll make it every single week, but it doesn't work that way. So you have a lot of that as well. You have a lot of these structures which don't have the ability to grow, because as and when the bricks get delivered to the door, they use the bricks incorrectly to build. They're not building the structure with the bricks. So I mean, like, that's also a big issue in our industry. And then what happens is then you get people who don't know how to spend money getting investment from people with money, and then you have an absolute disaster, because when someone doesn't know how to spend 50 grand correctly, gets 50 million, he literally pisses it away. The amount of people in the cannabis industry who have literally broken $50 million companies, it doesn't make sense. As in, it doesn't make sense. Like, these companies have just, these monster companies are literally in negative assets of $165 million. And you're like, how are you still alive? Because the billionaire behind them doesn't want to let them lose, because he's just put $200 million into this thing, like a fifth of his assets. So it's just like, it's the whole thing is a false construction. And I urge people to always look deeper, read the Reddit forums, like Google these people's names, look at the bad information. The chances are the information which is bad is true, and the information which is good is false. That's one thing I tell you, because it's such a hard space. I'm sure you'll agree with me, Bill, right?
Absolutely. And I think you're pointing out a very interesting dynamic.
You're not allowed to say this shit though, Bill, because you'll get in trouble. And the thing is, though, I can say this because, and also I'm the one thing I'm happy about is you're not getting offended, because I'm not actually talking about you. I'm talking about the world around you, but I'm not talking about you. And so I really appreciate the fact that you're not, playing the devil's advocate there, and you're actually agreeing with me, because it is one of those problems which people don't seem to realize. They don't seem to realize what this world is. And you have a lot of these mums, I'm going to put my pension into cannabis. You're going to lose your pension, love. You're going to lose your money, because the structure you're investing in, it's not legitimate. Do you know what I mean? Like David Beckham has lost hundreds of millions of dollars of people. Why? Because he put his face on the front of a brand. Now, when he puts his face on anything, everyone thinks it's going to do well because he's David Beckham. He's a national treasure. Why?
But-
David Beckham won't hurt me.
But if I, this is the whole thing. I mean, I come from a marketing advertising background. There's no point in just getting a personality or a celebrity, shoving their name onto a brand unless there's some synergy there. So to use the analogy, and I've used it in the past with Ollie, and I don't know whether you'd agree with this, Bill. If you take David Beckham and Hague whiskey, spent a fortune on Club Blue or whatever it's called. Anybody who knows about whiskey, no offense to David Beckham, he's a perfectly nice man, but anyone who knows seriously about whiskey and really enjoys it goes, I wouldn't touch that with a barge pole. It's a beautiful bottle. The advertising is great. Okay, but the whiskey, no. So if you actually know what you're doing, you can see this is never going to work from day one.
It's the difference between the picture and the word. So everyone's backed that picture. David Beckham is a picture. He's a painting. So everyone looks at that painting. It's the Mona Lisa. So everyone wants it. But like the poem that was once upon a time written about Mona Lisa, forgotten about. But that poem was the inspiration behind the picture, and that poem is what is actually the validation. But it's not getting listened to. People only want the bright, shiny image, which is going to distract them.
They like
the
a
actual
simplistic view
education,
of life.
which is going to build
life isn't
them.
simple. Bill, if you were to take this is a kind of huge question here. If you took a helicopter view of these things, as you guys say, I don't know what the new phrase is. Probably have to take a drone view of it these days. Where do you think the industry and chaps like Ollie are going to be in, let's say, 5 years' time?
I think in 5 years' time, we're going to be coming out of the early throes of what a legal construct really meant, right? So there's going to be I think that within that time horizon is where we're going to see the vast majority of this come out of the darkness and into the light. And we're going to see not a mass legalization. I think you'll actually see, a fairly minimalist construct of legalization occur, and that will have a shakeout. And granted, I'm a little biased with my U.S. background to what I think is possible in the U.S. context. The U.K. may be a little more rigorous, maybe a little more. The aperture may be a little more wide open here to a broader range of things. But I think you'll see in 5 years' time us coming out of the back end of that with better companies in the space, more trustworthy products in the space, the realization of some, if not all, of the ideas on tax revenue and jobs. And, we will be on our way to probably a second wave of combinations of new products being developed, probably a fairly significant wave of mergers and acquisitions in the space. So
there's so much MMA happening at the moment. So much M&A happening at the moment. Literally the mergers and acquisitions are just through the roof. I actually don't know many companies left who haven't been merged yet. As in, it just doesn't make sense. Then I'll say 5 or 6 of it. We got taken over last year. As in, we got bought by Jen Kenner around 18 months ago. I think 3 or 4 of our biggest manufacturing competitors, the people who could potentially be seen at our kneecaps. Okay, those people, as close as they can get. Anyway, those people, they've also just been bought. But I'll be honest with you, whoever bought them, you've done very badly. All done very, very badly. Well done, investors. And then there's a few other people out there. I'm seeing brands getting taken over, they're going out of fashion, And I see bigger brands also buying smaller brands in order to have market coverage. I mean, it's just it's a buyout play out there. I personally think that it's a waste of time because the energy behind the energy in these companies are the people. So unless you can buy someone's soul, as in buying their company, is not smart. Because, say, if I was to, I sold my company, I personally think I'm more valuable to my company than my company is to me. I think that in terms of my brain. So, I'm very fortunate. I've got a great team around me who support me.
Ollie, serious question, as I know you well. Why do you feel confident enough to to say that because it's a very bold statement.
Oh, fine. I'm confident to say it because I know what I have to offer this world. I also know full well this world's not set yet. It's constantly changing. It's adapting. So therefore, the
fluid.
model of yesterday, if it's not adapted and changed for tomorrow, will be dead tomorrow. So that's the main thing. It's not a stagnant market. It's a very, 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 well, what's the other word of stagnant? It's very rapidly moving.
It's very,
Very fluid, exactly. Very, very fluid. Now, the whole idea is being someone who understands cannabis, having a bit of an entrepreneurial hat on, and actually seeing the world around us change means that I know we need to evolve. Now, if I leave the company stays the same. It might bring in another expert who has a vision, but generally, I also know I'll be okay. I know that like my brain is more valuable to me than my company is to me. Do you understand what I mean? Like, this is more important for this industry to me than the structure around me. You could always build another structure. I could call up Bill, who'll probably build me a structure if I wanted him to. Do you know what I mean? It's not difficult to find investors out there. Like, I'm sure Bill would agree with you. It's not hard to find money. Money's not hard to find. Also, people are not hard to find. But people getting on with money, that's the hard. Finding that relationship that works well, that's the hard bit. You know, like there's so much money that's been lost in this industry. So millions have been spent incorrectly. I mean, if it was that easy, everyone would be smashing it. Those millions which were lost would be made. You know, that 50 million which was invested should be 500 million if you've got the right people spending it, investing it, using it. If you're not making 10x on your money, you're wasting your time. So that's the other side of it. You know, like I know the industry has now got to a point where it's blossomed and it's flourished. All right. So people know that there is an industry there. People within the industry, we've all built our relationships. We all know each other. Money's coming in, but money will always be coming in now. People will keep on learning if they want. I mean, like we're at that stage where it's so fluid. You know, we're just moving parts on a chessboard. That's all we are. Right. We're moving part. We're just being moved around. So it's just like I know I'm going to be moved over the next few years. I know that I'm going to have to adapt to survive. I know I'm going to have to evolve. I know I'm going to be circulating. You know what I mean? But guys, I literally just got back from Glastonbury. If I'm not making any sense, you have to forgive me this week. Okay, everyone, I'm so wavy. I do apologize. So, but if I am not making any sense,
I was enjoying the show. I'll be honest with you.
I've really enjoyed it too. But I just had a lot of moments where I looked at myself like, Ollie, are you making any sense today? Is it like literally the words? Am I even using words? Like when I'm speaking,
no, it's okay. You haven't started speaking in tongues. I think it's a heartbeat away, but so close. Far, thank goodness, as we've got a special guest. I think we're still on track.
Can I ask you a quick question, Bill?
Sure.
What was your first interaction with medical cannabis, as in personally? Have you ever had a personal interaction with medical cannabis?
Not me personally. I have had friends that have had, particularly epilepsy. Some very good results with that.
Amazing.
Sleep issues. I have lots of friends in the autism world. From a personal, my two youngest kids are severely autistic. We've not had the prescription, unfortunately. I think there's a lot of good things that medical cannabis could get to, in combination with other things, not necessarily its own. But it's been too hard, quite frankly, and too inaccessible. And there's a lot there that can be done. It's just it's unfortunately not engaged the broader medical community. I think
you make a lot more sense now, by the way, Bill, just to let you know. You've just humanized yourself. I don't think you realize, but you've completely just humanized yourself. Everything now makes a hell of a lot more sense. It all just makes more sense. Mm-hmm. Like having your two children, who suffer the way they do, your entire journey through medicine, being a businessman, but knowing how can I apply my business head to a world to actually help people actually makes a hell of a lot more sense now. As someone who is on the spectrum, because of my Tourette's and everything, I'm definitely somewhere on that rainbow of beautiful colors. I feel you. I'm saying like it's amazing that you've got that brain and that push behind you, because it literally just makes a hell of a lot more sense. In the last 30 seconds, you've just completely humanized yourself.
As a serial entrepreneur of great repute, let me ask you this. Was I inspired or was I raving mad to think that giving a show to a man, which is live, giving a show to a man with Tourette's was a great idea or a really crazy idea that could have gone horribly wrong. If that was on a piece of paper, like this is the stuff, but it's got Tourette's, we could go anywhere. I wonder if you'd invest in that.
Absolutely. My experience thus far has been fabulous. So
bless you. Well, the thing about it is, I'm sure you appear on lots of very grown up sort of radio interviews and TV stuff and all of that sort of and podcasts. I'm sure you do, and it's all pretty po-faced and everything like that, and they come with an agenda. All of these things come with agenda, but at the heart of Men's Radio, our only agenda is to help with mental. And seriously, this is it: to help with mental health and to help with well-being. That's it. And whatever we do with that is a plus and a bonus, and that's it. So we don't come with any. We don't come with anything else. I won't even make notes. I won't make notes, and the reason
I literally make notes as we talk, just in case there's things I want to bring up.
And I don't with the thousands of guests we've had, because it's a conversation.
Sure.
You know. Are you also invested in America, by the way, Bill? Have you also invested in cannabis in America?
I have a company that is focused on the bankability issue. So we developed a solution for dispensaries so that they can be bankable and they can actually
blockchain related.
Blockchain related. Yeah.
I would love to talk to you about this actually, because I've got a few. It's something else I've been thinking about on the side. Like I've actually got a few buddies who I generally hate crypto. I really don't like crypto. I like NFTs because the whole idea of not being able to ever forge a piece of artwork, I really like that, so that's logical. I really like this whole blockchain. I like this whole idea of having a traceability behind everything, not being able to fake prescriptions, not being able to say your prescription didn't arrive, all these random things. They create this chain of sequence of events that can never be forged. I really find it extremely logical. And I feel like with the banking and stuff, it would be an incredible thing to implement, some form of systematic calculatory tool, do you know what I mean, which enables people to earn and keep. It's very, very, very smart. Do you find that we've got 3 minutes left? Okay, fine. Do you find that the pickaxe theory, so the pickaxe theory of everything around cannabis, which isn't actually cannabis itself, so like Canatech, etc., do you reckon that market is the market that's going to shoot up next as opposed to actual product?
I actually think there needs to be some maturation on the actual product side before the tech isn't just a bit of an echo chamber. The exposure we've had to the tech side of this is that there's just a lot of inflationary pressure, to be honest. I mean, it's the what you were describing earlier about the private equity money coming in and dumping a lot of money on things that are immature. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster.
No, it's an absolute joke. Absolute joke. Like I asked someone recently for an investment for $200,000. They were like, we don't invest less than $5 million. I was like, cool. So give me $5 million. I'll keep 4.8 in the bank. I'll use 200,000 as when you want your money back. I'll pay you back your money with the interest. I'll make from your $5 million in about 3 weeks. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, it doesn't make sense. I go, so give me the 5. We can't give you the 5 because your business model doesn't need the 5. All right, fine. So listen, I need $5 million. I'm going to blow 4.8 million of it on cars and restaurants and clothes and shit
and
building the best office you've ever seen.
Do that.
I'm gonna buy Russ a new Ferrari because his old Ferrari, it doesn't exist, and we're gonna do some incredible things, and I'm gonna spend 200 grand on my business. Is that okay? And they're like, if you could put that on paper, that's an investable business model. It's insane. Jeez. It's insane, like literally insane.
Yeah. No, and I think you're going to see that continue. I think in the 5-year time horizon, a lot of that is going to continue to happen and shake out. And the products themselves, the good brands, are going to emerge for 3 to 4 years, right? And so the next wave of M&A action where real value is being created, I don't know that people know what they're going to be buying yet. I don't know that those companies necessarily exist yet. So I think that the legalization, the maturation, the merger, or the marriage with tech, it all has to be based on kind of the legal construct and getting us to a place where this is an industry where a future can be built, where jobs and taxes and everything else comes along with it. And that's there's a price to be paid for that. The Wild West part of this will diminish as it should. And you'll get real products out there doing real good for real people, and which is, I think, where we all want to be.
I knew this would be, I was hoping this would be a good conversation, but this has been a great conversation. Bill, thank you. Thank you. I know how busy you are. You're only here in London for a very limited period of time. Thank you for spending some of that time with us. Thank you for joining us on the ABC of CBD. We will be back same time next week. Until then, as I always say, stay safe and stay out of trouble.